Dwayne Harris, a 45-year-old man, stood silently on the porch of his expansive Texas farm, his eyes gazing far over the cotton fields and fruit orchards that once echoed with the laughter of Samantha, his late wife. 3 years had passed since Samantha's tragic death in an unexplained accident. Since then, only Dwayne and Tango, his loyal German shepherd, remained, caught in the suffocating grip of loneliness. Dwayne couldn't forget the happy moments they had shared on this farm. Samantha had always loved tending to the land, caring for the crops and trees. She had dreamed of a future full of hope, where their family would live in peace, building a complete life together. "We'll grow old here," Samantha would often say, her eyes sparkling with trust and anticipation. But now, those words were nothing more than a distant memory, a far-off dream, because Samantha was no longer by his side. Dwayne couldn't overcome the loss. Each day seemed to repeat the same monotonous tasks, but he never felt accomplished. The vast farm no longer had the laughter, the jokes Samantha used to share every morning. Silence had settled in, even inside the house they had built together. The winter storm outside howled and screeched, but it couldn't drown out the emptiness inside him. Tango, his loyal dog, was always by Dwayne's side, following him everywhere, as if trying to fill the void in his heart. But even Tango, with its unmatched loyalty, could not fill the space left by Samantha's absence. "Everything has changed since you left, Sam." "I don't know what to do anymore," Dwayne whispered, his voice breaking slightly as he gazed out at the wide cotton fields before him. Tango's footsteps in the mud were the only sound, as the dog moved with him, an unspoken reminder of the past. Dwayne had tried to throw himself into work, tried to force a smile, tried to forget, but nothing seemed to work. His heart wasn't in it. The fields still grew, the fruit trees still blossomed, and the cattle still roamed, but there was no one to share it with. The farm had become a prison, a place where every corner reminded him of what he had lost. The kitchen, once filled with the aroma of Samantha's cooking and her laughter, now stood still, devoid of life. Tango was the only companion he had left, and even that seemed insufficient. There were moments when Dwayne stood outside, staring at the fields they had worked together, and memories would come flooding back, sharp and painful. He could almost see Samantha's face, hear her laugh, feel her hand in his. "We're going to grow old here," she had said, her eyes full of hope as they made plans for the future. "We'll watch our children run through these fields." But those dreams would never come true. A flash of lightning cut through the sky, briefly lighting up the land before him, highlighting the emptiness. Tango jerked awake, standing up, his eyes sharp. Dwayne didn't need to ask what had caught its attention. He had lived long enough with Tango to know when something was wrong. The storm was growing stronger, the winds howling more fiercely, but there was something different about the air, something that made Dwayne feel like something was changing. Tango began to growl, and Dwayne followed its gaze toward the barn. There was something moving out there, just out of reach of the storm's fury. Dwayne's heart raced, and for the first time in years, he felt a sliver of hope, however fleeting. It might be the storm playing tricks on him, but something told him it wasn't. He quickly grabbed his raincoat, his heavy boots thudding on the wood floor as he stepped out into the downpour. Tango followed, its paws sinking into the mud as they both moved toward the barn. The beam from Dwayne's flashlight cut through the dark, illuminating a fresh set of footprints in the mud, clear and deep, leading straight to the barn door. The hinges creaked as Dwayne pulled the door open, the wind howling around him. The light from his flashlight fell on a sight that froze him in his tracks. A woman huddled in the corner, cradling a small child in her arms. She looked up at him, fear in her eyes, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Please, help us," she whispered, her voice hoarse, almost drowned out by the wind. Dwayne's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know who this woman was or how she had come to be on his farm. But her eyes, there was something in them that reminded him of Samantha. For the first time in years, Dwayne felt something he hadn't felt before: hope. He had been living in the darkness of grief, but now something felt different. The weight of the loneliness, the sorrow of loss, seemed a little less heavy as he knelt down to help this stranger, as if the storm outside was sweeping away the years of pain. "It's going to be okay," Dwayne said softly, looking at the woman and the child, his voice strangely steady. "You'll be safe here, I promise." As the storm raged outside, Dwayne knew one thing for sure: his life was about to change. Whether he was ready or not, the next chapter was beginning, and it was starting with a woman and a child who needed him just as much as he needed them. The storm raged on, its fury hammering the windows of Dwayne's farmhouse as he made his way across the expansive property. The wind howled through the cotton fields and twisted the branches of the fruit trees, creating a chilling melody of nature's wrath. Dwayne's boots sank into the muddy earth as he walked, Tango at his side, ever vigilant. He had done this routine for years now, walking the perimeter of his land, checking the fences, making sure everything was secure. It was a habit, a way to pass the time and keep the silence of his home at bay. But tonight, something felt different. The cold bite of the wind cut through his jacket, and the steady patter of rain began to pick up in intensity. As Dwayne reached the barn, he noticed a figure in the distance. Something was moving. His heart skipped a beat. Tango, sensing his unease, started growling low in his throat, his body tense. Dwayne squinted through the darkness, and as a flash of lightning illuminated the yard, he saw her, a woman running towards him. She was soaked, her clothes clinging to her trembling body, her face pale with fear. Dwayne's first instinct was to step forward, to protect, but something in her eyes told him this wasn't just an ordinary encounter. This woman and the child in her arms were running from something far more dangerous than a storm. As she got closer, Dwayne could see the terror etched on her face, the fear in her eyes as she looked over her shoulder. "Please, please help us." The woman's voice was hoarse, almost drowned out by the wind, but Dwayne could hear the desperation in it. She was out of breath, her face streaked with rain and tears. "What's going on?" Dwayne asked, his voice soft but firm. Tango stood by his side, still growling, sensing the urgency in the air. "They're after us," the woman gasped, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts. "He's after us. Michael, my husband. He's a doctor, a respected doctor. But he's doing terrible things. He's been experimenting on people, on patients. We had to run, Dwayne. He's going to kill us if we don't disappear." The words hung in the air between them, like a dark cloud threatening to descend. Dwayne felt his heart race. He had heard rumors about Dr. Michael Thompson, a well-known physician, a medical professional whose reputation was built on years of success. But what this woman was saying made his blood run cold. A respected doctor performing illegal experiments? It didn't make sense. "Who are you?" Dwayne asked, his mind racing with questions. He took a step closer to the woman, his gaze falling on the small child in her arms. The boy, no older than 4, was clutching his mother tightly, his eyes wide with fear. "My name is Rachel," the woman replied, her voice shaking. "This is Aaron, my son. We had to leave. Michael. He started doing things that are unexplainable. We couldn't stay, Dwayne. We couldn't let him hurt us anymore." Dwayne stood frozen for a moment, trying to process everything she had said. He glanced at the boy, then back at Rachel. She was shaking, her exhaustion and fear so apparent that it made his chest tighten. He knew he couldn't turn them away. The farm, as isolated as it was, had always been a place of peace, an escape from the chaos of the world. And now, it seemed, It was about to become a sanctuary for someone in desperate need of protection. "If he's after you, I won't let him find you here," Dwayne said, his voice low and filled with resolve. "If he wants to find you, I'll make sure he has to go through me first." Rachel's eyes filled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. You would help us?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dwayne nodded. "I don't know what's going on, Rachel, but I do know one thing. You're safe here for now." But as Dwayne spoke those words, a cold chill swept through him. This wasn't just a simple case of someone needing shelter from the storm. Michael Thompson was a man with power, influence, and connections. If he was indeed chasing his wife and son, Dwayne knew he was about to face something far darker than he had ever encountered before. "You can stay here tonight," Dwayne continued, his mind already racing with what he would need to do to keep them safe. "But you have to tell me everything, Rachel. Everything you know. I'm not about to let you or your son be dragged into some twisted game, not while I'm still standing." Rachel nodded, her tears mixing with the rain. She stepped forward, pulling Aaron closer to her. The storm was still howling outside, but in that moment the storm inside her seemed to quiet for a brief second. She had found a place of safety, even if it was just for now. "We have to be careful, Dwayne," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what he's capable of. Michael, he's not just a husband. He's a monster." Dwayne gave a tight nod. "I'll make sure you're safe. I'll protect you both. But we need to be smart about this." As the storm continued to rage outside, Dwayne knew one thing for certain. His life and the lives of Rachel and Aaron had just taken a turn for the worse. They were now part of something much bigger than a simple storm, and it was up to him to figure out how to survive it. The storm outside had subsided, leaving behind a quiet stillness. The wind had died down, and the rain was now a distant memory, though the world outside still carried the heavy scent of wet earth. Dwayne sat in the dim light of the kitchen, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, trying to focus on the warmth of the drink, the sound of Tango's paws on the wooden floor, and the faint glow of the oil lamp. Rachel and Aaron had been in his home for nearly a week, and while they had found shelter and safety, there was still an air of unease between them all. The storm had forced them to confront more than just the physical threat of Michael Thompson. It had forced Dwayne to confront his own past, his grief, and his overwhelming sense of isolation. Rachel had been the first person to truly break through the walls he had carefully built around his heart. As Rachel sat across from him, tending to Aaron's needs, a silence fell over the room that wasn't uncomfortable, but rather filled with an unspoken understanding. Dwayne had noticed how Rachel would sometimes glance at him when she thought he wasn't looking, her eyes searching for something, maybe reassurance or trust. He knew she had her own demons, her own pain, but something about the way she cared for her son, how she protected him, made him respect her in ways he hadn't respected anyone in years. Over dinner, Rachel began to speak of her past, of her life with Michael Thompson, and of Samantha, the woman who had been so much to Dwayne, the woman he had loved with all his heart. Rachel's voice was soft, but steady as she spoke of Samantha's kindness, her unwavering love for her family, and the way she had dedicated herself to her community. Dwayne listened intently as Rachel painted a picture of a woman he had lost, but would never forget. She really believed in people, Dwayne, Rachel said softly, setting her fork down, her voice breaking slightly. Your wife, she was more than just a loving mother and wife. She was the heart of this place. The way she would stop to help anyone who needed it, no matter who they were, it made her something special. I could see it in the way the people here looked at her. Dwayne felt a lump form in his throat, a mixture of grief and gratitude washing over him. Samantha's memory had always been something he tried to keep buried, but hearing Rachel speak about her so freely, with such admiration, brought it all rushing back. "She taught me a lot," Dwayne said, his voice low. He didn't realize how much he missed talking about her until Rachel had brought her up. She believed in the good in people, even when the world tried to show her otherwise. She made me want to be a better man. Rachel's eyes softened. She could see the pain in his eyes, the same pain she knew all too well. "I can see that in you, Dwayne. I think you've always been a good man. Maybe you just need to believe in yourself a little more." Dwayne looked at her, startled by her words. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to him like that, with such understanding. He had always seen himself as someone who had failed, as someone who couldn't protect the one person he loved more than anything. But Rachel saw something different in him. The days passed, and with each one, Dwayne and Rachel grew closer, slowly learning to trust each other. Rachel began to feel a warmth she hadn't felt in years, a kind of peace that came with knowing that someone, especially someone like Dwayne, was there to watch over them. He had become her protector, her anchor in a storm she had never imagined she would survive. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the air grew cooler, Rachel found herself alone with Dwayne outside the house. Tango lay quietly by their feet, as if sensing the change in the air. Rachel turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you, Dwayne," Rachel said, her voice barely a whisper. "You've given me so much more than I ever could have hoped for. You've saved me, and you've given Aaron a chance at something better. I never thought I'd feel this safe again. I didn't think I could trust anyone after everything that's happened." Dwayne looked at her, his gaze steady and sincere. "I'm just doing what feels right, Rachel. You and Aaron don't have to face this alone. If Michael Thompson wants to find you, he'll have to go through me first." Rachel's eyes welled with tears. "I've never met anyone like you. You're not just protecting us, you're giving me hope again. And that means everything." Dwayne's heart swelled with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. As Rachel's words sank in, he realized just how much he had needed to hear them. In the time they had spent together, he had come to see Rachel not just as someone in need, but as someone he admired deeply. She was strong, resilient, and so much like Samantha in the way she fought for the people she loved. He had found something in her, something he thought he had lost forever. "I'll always be here for you," Dwayne said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise, Rachel. No matter what happens, you're not alone." That night, as they both lay in their separate rooms, Dwayne couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. There was a connection now between him and Rachel, one that went deeper than mere protection or kindness. It was trust. And with trust, there was the possibility of something more, something Dwayne hadn't dared hope for in a long time. As the quiet night surrounded the farmhouse, he found himself finally allowing that spark of hope to grow, knowing that, just maybe, he wasn't beyond feeling love again. The storm had subsided, but the storm brewing inside Dwayne was far from over. The more he thought about the mysterious circumstances surrounding Samantha's death, the more doubts began to surface. For years, he had convinced himself that her death was a tragic accident, a cruel twist of fate that took her away from him. But now, with Rachel's presence in his life and the secrets she had begun to reveal, Dwayne couldn't help but question everything. The possibility that Samantha's death wasn't an accident at all, but the result of something far darker, was a thought that haunted him more than he was willing to admit. Rachel sat across from him one evening, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I don't want to ruin your life, Dwayne, but I can't stay silent anymore. Samantha uncovered something we need to know. It's about Michael." Dwayne's breath caught in his throat. He had already suspected something was off, but hearing Rachel confirm it filled him with a sense of dread he couldn't shake. "What did she find?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" Rachel took a deep breath, as if weighing whether or not to go further. Her eyes, filled with concern, never left his. "I found files, medical records, Dwayne. They didn't make sense. Michael Thompson wasn't just practicing medicine. He was experimenting. There were patients, people he claimed had died, but the truth is, they were still alive. He was conducting experiments on them, making them appear dead and then reviving them. And Samantha, she saw it." Dwayne felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard of unethical practices in medicine before, but the thought that someone, especially a man like Dr. Michael Thompson, a respected figure in the medical community, would engage in such horrors was almost too much to bear. And now, the thought that his wife's death might have been a part of those experiments. It was more than he could process. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what Rachel was telling him. "Do you think Samantha, she discovered this before she died?" Rachel nodded slowly, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I believe she did. She knew something wasn't right. She tried to access files, she tried to warn me, but I didn't understand until now. Michael was hiding the truth. And I'm afraid that Samantha, she knew too much." Dwayne's heart ached with the weight of her words. If Rachel was right, if Samantha had truly uncovered something sinister, then her death was not just a random tragedy. It had been the result of something far more calculated. Dwayne was no longer just grieving the loss of his wife. He was now driven by the need for answers, for justice. "I need to find out the truth," Dwayne said, his voice firm despite the storm raging inside him. "She deserves answers, and I won't stop until I have them." Rachel looked at him with a mixture of fear and admiration. "You have to be careful, Dwayne. Michael will do anything to protect his secrets. He's dangerous, and if he finds out you're digging into his past, he'll stop at nothing to silence you." Dwayne knew the risks, but the desire for justice, the need to honor Samantha's memory, burned brighter than the fear that tried to creep into his mind. "I don't care how dangerous he is. I'm not going to let him get away with it." With Rachel's help, Dwayne began to piece together the puzzle of Dr. Michael Thompson's twisted experiments. They dug into the medical records Rachel had discovered, cross-referencing names and dates. The more they uncovered, the more they realized the scope of the doctor's actions. There were whispers of patients who had vanished without a trace, of lives destroyed for the sake of experimentation. And somewhere, hidden deep in those files, was the evidence that could bring Michael down once and for all. As they gathered more evidence, Dwayne's resolve hardened. He couldn't let Michael continue to destroy lives, not when he had the power to stop it. But the danger grew with each step they took. It wasn't long before Dwayne noticed strange cars parked near his farm, unfamiliar faces lurking around the edges of his property. Someone was watching them. One night, as Dwayne and Rachel went over their plans in the dimly lit kitchen, Tango began barking furiously at the door. Dwayne's heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. Before he could react, the door slammed open, and standing in the doorway was Michael Thompson, his face twisted with rage. Behind him, two burly men stepped into the room, their eyes cold with malice. "You've been poking around in things you don't understand," Michael growled, his voice laced with menace. "You think you can expose me? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Dwayne stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "You're not getting away with this, Michael. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done." Michael's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You really think you can stop me? You think you're the first person to come after me? I'm untouchable." But Dwayne wasn't backing down. Not now, not after everything he had learned. "I'm not afraid of you," he said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "And I'm not going to let you hurt anyone else." Rachel moved closer to Dwayne, her hand brushing his arm, a silent show of support. She had never seen him like this before, so determined, so ready to fight for what was right. It gave her strength, too. Michael took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "You'll regret this," he warned, his voice dripping with venom. "You don't know the power I have. You're already in over your head." But Dwayne knew something Michael didn't. He had the truth on his side, and with that truth, he would bring the doctor to justice, no matter the cost. As Michael and his men left, Dwayne knew that the battle was just beginning. The stakes had never been higher, and the danger was more real than ever. But he wasn't about to stop. Not now, not after everything they had uncovered. Rachel, Aaron, and even Tango were counting on him. And this time, Dwayne was ready to face whatever came next, because the truth could no longer be ignored. The storm raged outside, a deafening roar of wind and rain that seemed to mirror the turmoil building within Dwayne. As the night dragged on, he and Rachel discovered that Dr. Michael and his henchmen had arrived at the farm, searching for them. The weight of the situation was pressing in on them, and Dwayne knew it was time to face Michael once and for all. This confrontation was no longer just about physical survival. It was about exposing the truth and ending the nightmare that had plagued them for far too long. Dwayne's heart raced as he looked at Rachel. Her face was pale, but there was determination in her eyes. "We can't run anymore," she said, her voice low but steady. "It's time we end this, Dwayne." He nodded grimly. The storm outside was fierce, but it was nothing compared to the storm they were about to face with Michael. He had caused enough destruction in their lives. Dwayne wouldn't allow it to continue. They weren't running from this anymore. He was going to stand his ground and fight for what was right, even if it meant risking everything. As they made their way to the barn, Tango by their side, Dwayne's thoughts were consumed by his memories of Samantha. Her love, her kindness, her strength. She had always been his anchor. But now, in the face of this nightmare, he was becoming someone else. He had to. He was no longer just the lonely man mourning his wife. He was a man fighting for truth and justice, and nothing would stop him. The wind howled as they entered the barn. The door creaked ominously as Dwayne pushed it open, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He could feel the tension in the air, thick with danger and the unknown. A low growl from Tango signaled that they weren't alone. And there, standing in the shadows, was Dr. Michael Thompson. His cold eyes glinted in the dim light, his expression a mix of anger and arrogance. "You think you can stop me, Dwayne?" Michael sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "You're playing a dangerous game." Dwayne's voice was steady but filled with resolve. "Don't think you can keep lying to everyone forever, Michael. The truth will come to light, no matter what you do." Rachel stood beside Dwayne, her hand tightly gripping his arm. Her fear was evident, but so was her resolve. Michael had taken so much from her, and now she was ready to stand with Dwayne, ready to face the man who had caused so much suffering. Michael's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, do you?" he spat. "I've built my entire life on power, on control. You think you can tear that down? You think you can expose me? You're nothing." The threat in Michael's voice was clear, and Dwayne could feel the weight of his words, but it did not sway him. He stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "I've seen the lives you've destroyed, Michael. I've seen the families you've torn apart. This ends tonight." A cold smile spread across Michael's face. "You're too late," he said, his eyes flickering to the men standing behind him, who were now closing in on Dwayne and Rachel. "I've already covered my tracks. There's nothing you can do." But Dwayne refused to back down. "You may think you're invincible," he said, his voice low but powerful. "But everyone has a weakness, and I'll find yours." Rachel looked up at Dwayne, her eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and fear. "We can't do this alone, Dwayne. We need to be smart. We need to outsmart him." Dwayne nodded. He knew the fight wasn't just physical. They had to outthink Michael, expose him for who he really was. The storm outside seemed to grow louder, matching the intensity of the moment. They couldn't afford to hesitate. They had to act now. Suddenly, Michael's expression darkened. He took a step forward, his voice dripping with malice. "You think you can just walk in here and threaten me? I'll make sure you regret this, Dwayne. You've seen what I'm capable of. Don't make me show you again." Dwayne felt the weight of Michael's words, but he was resolute. He had come too far to back down now. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for Rachel, for Aaron, for the memory of Samantha, and for all the lives Michael had destroyed in his wake. Without warning, Tango lunged at one of Michael's men, and the barn erupted into chaos. But Dwayne remained focused. He knew what needed to be done. As Michael's men struggled to regain control, Dwayne saw his opening. With a swift motion, he grabbed the evidence they had gathered, the documents that could finally bring Michael's twisted experiments to light. "This is over, Michael," Dwayne said, his voice filled with finality. "You're done." Michael's face twisted in rage, but Dwayne didn't flinch. He had finally found his courage, and no one, especially not Michael, could take it away. The storm outside may have been fierce, but Dwayne knew that the true battle was happening right here, right now. The truth was coming, and nothing would stop it. After months of tension and relentless pursuit of the truth, Dwayne stood at the edge of his farm, watching as the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. He had spent countless hours piecing together evidence, confronting his own demons, and risking his life to uncover the dark secrets that Dr. Michael Thompson had hidden for years. But now, standing under the open sky with Rachel and Aaron by his side, he could finally see the end of the road. The storm had passed, both literally and metaphorically. The relentless pursuit of justice had brought them to this moment, where the truth about Dr. Michael's experiments was now undeniable. The police, having gathered enough evidence, were closing in on the doctor. Dwayne knew this wasn't just about them anymore. It was about bringing justice to all the lives Michael had destroyed, all the people he had hurt in the name of his so-called research. The day had come when Dwayne no longer had to wonder if he was doing the right thing. Every decision, every risk, every sleepless night had led to this moment. He had done the right thing. "We did it, Rachel," Dwayne said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "We've exposed him. We've stopped him. Samantha would be proud of us." Rachel, standing beside him, looked out over the land that had become both a sanctuary and a battleground. Her eyes were filled with a quiet gratitude. "You did it, Dwayne. You didn't give up. You didn't let fear control you. And now we can finally live without looking over our shoulders." Aaron, now safe and surrounded by people who cared for him, ran through the fields with Tango by his side. The laughter of the little boy filled the air, and for the first time in a long while, Dwayne felt a sense of peace wash over him. The innocence of Aaron's joy reminded him of what truly mattered: family, love, and the courage to fight for what was right. As the authorities moved in to arrest Dr. Michael Thompson, Dwayne couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and anger. He had spent so many years wrestling with his grief over Samantha's death, but now, in the light of truth, he could finally let go of the weight that had held him down for so long. Michael was going to pay for the lives he had ruined, for the families he had torn apart. Dwayne knew this was justice, not just for Samantha, but for every victim that Michael had silenced. In the days that followed, as the news of Dr. Michael's arrest spread, there was a quiet sense of vindication in the town. The small, tight-knit community that had always supported Dwayne, even when he had pushed them away, rallied together. They came to his farm, offering help, support, and words of encouragement. They knew that this was not just Dwayne's victory, it was theirs as well. Dwayne and Rachel began to rebuild their lives, but it was not just about healing the wounds of their past. They were now part of something bigger, something that transcended their individual struggles. The farm, once a symbol of Dwayne's solitude and grief, became a place of new beginnings. It was a place where people could come to heal, to find refuge, to reclaim the lives that had been stolen from them by a man who had hidden behind the guise of medicine and authority. Rachel had become a beacon of strength, not just for Dwayne, but for the others who had been affected by Michael's experiments. Together, they began working with survivors, helping them rebuild their lives and rediscover their hope. They used the farm as a sanctuary, a place where people could find solace and support, knowing they were not alone. It wasn't just about healing bodies, it was about healing souls. Dwayne, standing at the edge of his property once more, looked out over the land with a sense of pride and purpose. He had fought for the truth, and he had won. He had brought justice to the memory of Samantha, to the victims of Michael's cruelty, and to himself. The future was no longer a terrifying unknown. It was something he could face with hope, with courage, and with the knowledge that love and truth had triumphed over darkness. "This is just the beginning," Dwayne whispered to Rachel, who stood beside him. "We'll make sure no one forgets what happened here. We'll keep fighting for what's right, for all the lives Michael took and tried to erase. We won't stop until everyone knows the truth." Rachel nodded, her heart full of gratitude and determination. "And we'll do it together, Dwayne. For Samantha. For everyone. For us." As the sun set behind the fields, casting a golden light over the land, Dwayne felt a quiet sense of hope settle in his chest. It was the kind of hope that came from standing up for what was right, from fighting against the darkness and emerging victorious. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in years, Dwayne knew that he was not walking it alone. Together, they would face whatever came next, with courage, with love, and with the unshakable belief that justice had been served. As time passed, the peaceful days that Dwayne, Rachel, and Aaron spent together began to shape a new reality, one filled with hope and rebuilding. The pain of the past, though never fully forgotten, had begun to fade into the background, replaced by the strength of their new family bond. Dwayne, who had once been consumed by grief and solitude, had found a new purpose as a father and protector, not only for Rachel but also for little Aaron. Aaron, who had once been a scared, lost child, running from the horrors of his father's cruelty, now smiled with the innocence of a boy who had finally found safety. His laughter echoed through the house, a sound that was unfamiliar to Dwayne but cherished deeply. Aaron had become the son Dwayne had always longed for, and Dwayne had become the father Aaron had always needed, someone to guide him, to show him what real love and protection were. As they sat together one evening, watching the sun set over the horizon, Rachel leaned her head on Dwayne's shoulder. He gently wrapped his arm around her, a gesture of comfort and affection. The life they were building together felt like a dream come true, something they both had been denied for so long. Rachel turned to Dwayne, her eyes soft yet filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Dwayne, for always being there for me, for us. I couldn't have done this without you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dwayne's heart swelled as he looked at Rachel, the woman who had become his rock after all the turmoil. "Every day with you and Aaron is a day worth living. I never want to lose a moment of this," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. Their relationship had evolved into something deeper than either of them had anticipated. They had both endured loss, but together they were creating something entirely new, something built on trust, love, and mutual respect. Through the toughest times, they had leaned on each other, and it was that very foundation that made their love stronger. Life on the farm, once a place of solitude for Dwayne, had transformed into a warm, bustling home. They worked together to maintain the land, each day bringing them closer to one another and to a future they could now envision. Dwayne had always been a man of few words, But with Rachel and Aaron by his side, he found himself more open, more connected to the world around him than he had ever been before. As they watched the sun sink beneath the horizon, Rachel reached over and squeezed his hand. "We've come a long way," she said, smiling through tears. "And we're just getting started." Dwayne nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears of his own. "Yes," he said softly, "we are. Together, we can face anything." And in that moment, surrounded by the love they had found in each other, they both knew that no matter what challenges the future held, they would face them together, united as a family, bound by love and the strength they had built from the ashes of their past. The story of Dwayne, Rachel, and Aaron is one that speaks to the profound resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love. At its core, the narrative is a testament to the importance of human connection, trust, and healing. Dwayne, a man deeply scarred by the loss of his wife and years of solitude, finds new hope and purpose through his relationship with Rachel and her son. Together they form a family, not bound by blood, but by their shared experiences of pain, loss, and survival. What makes this story so powerful is its portrayal of how love and support can overcome even the darkest of pasts. Despite the horrors Rachel and Aaron have endured, they are able to rebuild their lives with Dwayne's unwavering protection and care. In return, Dwayne learns that it's never too late to open his heart again, to love and be loved, and to find joy even after unimaginable loss. The narrative also highlights the importance of standing up for justice, even when it feels like the fight is too big or too dangerous. Dwayne's courage in protecting Rachel and Aaron, and his determination to seek the truth about his late wife's mysterious death, show that sometimes confronting the past is the only way to move forward. In a world where cruelty and corruption can often seem overwhelming, this story reminds us that hope, truth, and love are the forces that can break the cycle of suffering and create a brighter, more meaningful future for all. Share your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another amazing story. Together, we can shine a light on the power of doing what's right. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.